The lights of the Erebus flickered like an impatient audience, some panels humming softly, some sputtering as if unsure whether they wanted to stay on or not. Kale floated through the maintenance corridor, arms crossed, helmet off, and hair sticking up in directions that defied any known law of gravity. It wasn't often a human soldier returned from the dead, and certainly not in a zero-gravity corridor lined with buzzing conduits and blinking sensors that had grown accustomed to the predictable routines of alien engineers. Kale, for his part, ignored the gaping stares, the low whirs of drones mistaking him for a malfunctioning repair unit, and the soft curse-like mutters coming from the cafeteria as someone's tea floated past like a slow-motion comet. Lysera stood at the far end of the corridor, long ears twitching as if the vibrations in the air alone might tell her heart what to do. She had thought him gone, vaporized in the explosion that had claimed half the research team on Vera 9, and her mind had already filed him into the neat category of ghosts humans shouldn't talk about. Her ears flexed as she whispered under her breath, "This is impossible." Kale, catching the faint movement out of the corner of his eye, grinned like someone who had just remembered a particularly amusing joke. Impossible. He called, floating closer. "I've always hated that word. Always sounded too dramatic." Lysera's ears twitched again, one jerking sharply like a cat's in a thunderstorm, the other flicking in indecision. Kale's uniform was scorched in places, his boots missing a sole here and there, yet he had survived. Somehow, Kale had the uncanny ability to survive things that even the most reckless AI repair droid wouldn't attempt. He raised a brow and added, "Also, don't forget I bring cookies." A maintenance drone buzzed past, spinning in circles as it tried to assess Kale's existence. Kale waved at it. "Relax, buddy, I'm not a protocol violation yet." The drone beeped in a tone that suggested mild existential dread and continued on its way. Lysera's lips twitched as she suppressed a smile. It was impossible to remain entirely serious when Kale was in the room, and perhaps that was exactly the point of his improbable survival. He brought the absurdity of the universe in human form. Kale floated closer, elbows brushing the floating debris that drifted lazily along the corridor. He paused and saluted with one hand while catching a falling wrench with the other. "Admit it," he said, voice low, "you were hoping I'd stay dead. Easier to plan your life without a wandering human soldier lurking in every hallway, huh?" Lysera's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in disbelief. She had memorized every contour of his face years ago, every line and scar. Seeing them rearranged by survival and gravity-defying hair made it feel like she was witnessing a puzzle rearrange itself in real time. She said nothing. Her ears twitched in subtle rhythms, scanning for any anomalies in his biosignature. Nothing. He was alive. The crew would probably need a day to recover from their nervous breakdowns if they had the attention span to notice anything besides the floating objects. Kale glanced around the corridor. "You know this place is messy. Who designed it? A schizophrenic octopus?" He dodged a floating data pad which spun past like a frisbee and nearly hit an unfortunate intern in the cafeteria viewport. Lysera's long ears flexed in something that could have been amusement or irritation. With Kale, it was impossible to tell. "You're alive," she finally whispered again, more to herself than to him. "I can't how." Kale floated closer, brushing a strand of his messy hair back. "How am I alive?" he said, smiling faintly. "Mostly luck, partly bad planning by the people who tried to vaporize me, and maybe a little charm. Don't worry, you'll get used to it." He leaned back, letting a minor graviton current carry him backward, narrowly missing a cargo crate and sending a packet of protein noodles into gentle orbit. "Also," he added with mock solemnity, "I still owe someone a dozen apologies for every time I broke things that weren't technically mine." Lysera blinked at him. Her long ears twitched in precise intervals, betraying the tension she wanted to hide behind polite composure. Kale's survival had already thrown the station into a mild panic. Drones misidentified him, security protocols flared, and the crew had spent the last 30 minutes debating whether they should welcome him, quarantine him, or throw him into the gravity well just to be safe. Kale's presence had inadvertently proven one point: the universe had a terrible sense of humor. "I don't understand," Lysera said, more frustrated than afraid. "We lost you, Kale. Vera 9 it was." She shook her head. "Nothing should have left that planet alive." Kale smirked. "Right, and nothing should have survived my cooking either, but here I am. You humans, or I guess aliens who look suspiciously human, are all too obsessed with rules. Chaos works better sometimes, trust me. He gestured at a floating wrench that had somehow entangled itself around a cable, creating a miniature zero-gravity sculpture. Like this, he added, chaos art. Lysera let out a short, almost involuntary laugh, ear twitching spasmodically in rhythm. You're insufferable, she muttered, but the tight tension around her shoulders eased just a fraction. Kale's grin widened. Insufferable is part of my charm package, he said. Available now, no subscription required. The station groaned as the central power conduit flickered. Kale tilted his head. Is it me, or does this place hum like a confused electric eel? Lysera's long ears flicked toward the conduit, picking up the faint vibrations. It's fine, she said cautiously. Mostly, probably. She turned back to Kale. But your return, I need answers, not jokes. How did you survive? Who left you for dead? Kale floated closer, tapping the side of his helmet. Answers take time, stories take longer. And besides, he added, voice low, leaning as if sharing a secret, what fun would survival be without a few dramatic reveals and improbable near misses? He grinned, letting his boots barely brush the magnetic railing, careful not to knock over the hovering trays of alien rations. We're going to have some very awkward catching up to do, and trust me, he added, you're going to laugh at least once before this day is over, maybe more. Lysera's ears twitched once sharply, and she let herself feel the absurdity of the moment. A soldier she thought dead, cracking jokes, floating past wires and zero-gravity debris, daring the laws of probability itself while somehow charming her despite every rational instinct screaming to remain serious. Somewhere in the chaos, she realized the universe had thrown them together again, with equal parts danger, humor, and chaos waiting to test them both. Kale's laughter echoed in the corridor as he drifted toward her, bumping gently against a floating toolbox. You know, he said, voice suddenly serious but with a twinkle in his eyes, if you start taking me seriously, the universe might get bored. And then where's the fun in that? Lysera's ears twitched in amusement, disbelief, and a hint of admiration. For the first time in years, she felt the edges of fear blur with curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, surviving this human Kale would turn out to be an adventure worth every improbable, ridiculous floating second. Kale leaned against the bulkhead, one boot pressed against a floating pipe, and watched Lysera tap coordinates into a holographic console that shimmered like a shard of starlight. The station hummed around them, corridors bending subtly as the artificial gravity systems fought a minor fluctuation. Kale tilted his head. So let me get this straight, he said, voice carrying that trademark mix of sarcasm and curiosity. We're about to intercept an alien probe with the intelligence of a caffeinated jellyfish, armed with nothing but a couple of plasma turrets, a hacked maintenance drone, and my charm. Lysera's long ears twitched sharply, one flicking forward, the other curling slightly. If the probe were a caffeinated jellyfish, you might have a point, she said, tapping another sequence of commands. It's not. It's designed to manipulate graviton fields and potentially destabilize entire star systems. And yes, your charm may help if it confuses it long enough for us to plug a few quantum disruptors in the right sequence. Kale grinned, stretching his arms in zero gravity until his fingertips nearly brushed the ceiling. Fantastic! I've always wanted to be the distracting element in a near-apocalyptic scenario. Very Hollywood. He floated over to a small rack of floating tools and snagged a plasma spanner, spinning it between his fingers like a juggling act. Do I get a cape? Because this is the kind of heroics that deserve a cape. Lysera snorted, though her ears twitched in annoyance. You do realize this is serious, right? People could die, stars could be destroyed, planets vaporized. Yeah, Kale said, spinning the spanner one last time before letting it drift, but isn't that kind of the point? I live for suspense, and besides, if I'm going to return from the dead, it's only fair I make a little chaos while I'm at it. The two of them floated down a corridor that branched into the lower decks, the walls lined with glowing conduits and the occasional magnetic storage crate that drifted lazily in their wake. Kale leaned toward Lysera, voice low. Do your long ears ever get tired? I mean, do they cramp? Do you have to stretch them? Lysera gave him a look that combined irritation and disbelief, ears twitching sharply. They function perfectly, and yes, they're adaptive, Unlike some humans, they don't require constant snacks or sarcasm to operate. Hey, Kale said, mock offense coloring his tone. Sarcasm is a vital survival tool. You'll thank me later, probably. The pair arrived at the tactical lab, a room floating with holographic projections of star systems and orbiting probes. The alien probe in question shimmered on one of the displays, an intricate lattice of biometallic filaments that seemed to pulse in rhythm with an unseen heartbeat. Lysera's fingers danced across the controls, running simulations that showed what would happen if it reached the outer system. Kale, meanwhile, was busy floating upside down, tapping panels at random and occasionally bouncing off a graviton stabilizer. Careful, Lysera snapped, though her lips twitched with the hint of a smile. You could trigger a security lockdown. Kale shrugged. Security lockdown, schmerity lockdown. If a probe can destabilize stars, I think a few alarms are a minor inconvenience. He floated to a small viewport, staring out at the swirling storms of the gas giant below. You ever get used to staring at the bottomless chaos of a planet that wants to kill everything in sight? Lysera's ears twitched, one flicking toward him, the other scanning the distant horizon. No, and I like to keep it that way, keeps me alert, keeps you from floating into the wrong maintenance shaft. Hale grinned, fair point. Wouldn't want to spoil the whole dramatic return from the dead thing by ending up as an impromptu paperweight. He tapped the panel next to the holographic probe. So what's the plan? I assume I get to do something really clever, like throw a banana peel into a graviton generator. Lysera's hands paused mid-simulation. Not exactly. She gave him a pointed look and Kale floated closer, adopting a mock-serious expression. All right, tell me the plan, oh wise one with ears that can probably hear my heartbeat from across the station. Lysera allowed herself a brief smirk. We need to intercept the probe before it reaches the outer systems. I'll handle the calculations, the trajectory corrections, and the quantum disruptors. She tapped his chest. You keep it distracted, use whatever human improvisation skills got you this far. Hale's grin widened. Excellent. Chaos, confusion, and me, got it. Sounds like a perfect plan, what could possibly go wrong? They prepared for launch in the station's smaller intercept shuttle, a sleek craft designed for speed and maneuverability rather than comfort. Kale immediately claimed the co-pilot seat, flipping switches at random and making exaggerated sound effects for each minor beep. Lysera's ears twitched in irritation, but she didn't stop him. Some chaos, she realized, was best left uncontrolled. As the shuttle left the station, Kale leaned back and gazed out at the stars. He said casually, I think zero gravity should be an Olympic sport. Maybe with a category for avoiding exploding probes, I'd win gold. Lysera rolled her eyes, though her ears flexed in a way that almost looked like laughter. Focus, Kale. The probe is accelerating faster than anticipated. We need to match its trajectory precisely. Kale nodded, tapping a series of buttons at random. Got it. Matching trajectory. I just hope it likes humans. Otherwise, we're in for a bit of a grumpy conversation. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the probe's field, the holographic instruments around them spinning wildly. Kale's head tilted back as he tried to suppress a grin. This is it, Lysera, moment of truth. Either we save the stars, or we provide a spectacular light show for anyone unfortunate enough to be watching. Lysera's fingers flew across the controls, her long ears twitching in perfect synchrony with the shuttle's movements. Kale, meanwhile, leaned back in his seat, casually tossing small tools into microorbits around the cockpit. He said, voice low and conspiratorial, if this works, we should celebrate with alien pastries. Maybe one that doesn't explode when touched, or maybe do if we're feeling dramatic. Lysera finally allowed herself a chuckle, short and sharp, as the shuttle's system stabilized. You're impossible. And yet, Kale said with a wink, you're still letting me fly the ship. The probe loomed ahead, an intricate lattice of shimmering biometallic threads, pulsating in a rhythm that was almost musical. Kale floated closer to the viewport, grinning. All right, partner, time to see if your calculations and my charm can actually save the universe. Spoiler alert, we probably will, and if not, he waved at a floating wrench. Well, at least we'll look good in zero gravity while failing. Lysera's ears twitched, a subtle sign of amusement and tension tangled together. They moved in tandem, human improvisation and alien precision, each relying on the other in ways neither expected. As they prepared to engage the probe, Kale whispered, almost to himself, "This is going to be fun." And for once, Lysera allowed herself to agree, even if only in the silent rhythm of her twitching ears. The alien faction's stronghold floated in the void like a jagged crown of obsidian, each spire humming with its own electromagnetic pulse. Kale grinned, resting one boot against the shuttle console while Lysera tapped sequences into the controls, long ears flicking rhythmically as she calibrated the disruptor beams. "Beautiful," Kale said, voice low, "if you like your villain layers with a side of over-the-top dramatics." Lysera shot him a sharp look, ears twitching. "Focus, this is not a sightseeing tour. These beings aren't just arrogant, they're dangerous. And they have a remarkable taste for theatrical entrances." Kale shrugged, spinning a wrench between his fingers. "Good, I like theatrics, makes the inevitable explosions look better." The shuttle's engines flared as they approached the fortress, and Kale made a series of overly dramatic gestures, ducking imaginary lasers and pretending to vault over invisible fences. Lysera's fingers danced across the control panel, a precise symphony of commands that guided their craft past pulsating force fields. "I swear," she muttered, ears twitching in irritation, "if you break something before we even land." "Break something?" "Me?" Kale feigned shock, leaning back and letting the shuttle glide upside down through a gravity distortion. "Never, I'm far too charming for that." As the shuttle docked with the alien stronghold, alarms flared and automated turrets whirred to life. Kale immediately grabbed a loose cable, twirling it like a lasso to trip the nearest defense drone. The drone toppled in slow motion, a flurry of sparks and confused beeping. "See," he said, floating past Lysera, "improvisation saves the day, always has." Lysera couldn't suppress a grin, her ears flicking with subtle amusement. "You're ridiculous." "Thank you, it's a skill." The interior of the fortress was a labyrinth of corridors lined with biometallic panels that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Shadows twisted unnaturally as if the walls themselves were alive, shifting to track intruders. Kale drifted ahead, peering around corners while Lysera followed, mapping the most efficient path toward the main chamber. "I still don't know how you got this far without completely panicking," she said. Kale shrugged. "Panic is for people with predictable lives. I prefer chaos, it's liberating." He floated past a room where holographic projections of alien leaders rehearsed speeches, and unable to resist, he waved. "Hello, just passing through." One hologram blinked in confusion. Perfect. They reached the chamber where the alien leaders awaited, a semicircle of tall, crystalline figures, each limb a lattice of energy conduits. The tallest stepped forward, voice resonating like a chorus of wind over metal. "Humans and your accomplice, you cannot hope to survive here." Hale tilted his head, floating nonchalantly. "Survival's kind of my thing. Also, I like to make dramatic entrances. Yours just happened to be too predictable." He flicked a tool toward the control panel, causing the holograms to flicker and warp. And now, distraction achieved. Lysera raised a hand, fingers dancing across her console as her long ears twitched. "We neutralize their energy grids while Kale keeps them occupied," she said. "Precision and whatever chaos he can manage." Kale grinned. "I accept my role with honor." He twirled a floating screwdriver at one of the leaders, who recoiled, completely baffled by the absurdity of a human juggling tools in zero gravity. Lysera activated the disruptors, beams of quantum energy lancing through the corridors and destabilizing the alien circuitry. The crystalline leaders staggered, struggling to maintain coherence as their own systems short-circuited. Kale floated toward one particularly indignant hologram, dodging energy arcs and kicking floating tools into its path. "You're welcome," he said. "It's what I do." The hologram collapsed, flickering like a broken light, and Kale gave an exaggerated bow. Lysera's console beeped rhythmically as the last of the disruptors aligned. "Almost there," she said, ears twitching as she calculated one final sequence. The chamber vibrated as the alien stronghold systems began to unravel, a low hum rising to a crescendo. Hale tapped her shoulder. "Need me to do the dramatic save, or are you handling that?" "Focus," she snapped, though her lips curved in amusement. With a final keystroke, the energy grids collapsed entirely, the fortress shuddering as its own systems betrayed it. Hale leaned back, floating with arms crossed. And that, my dear Lysera, is how chaos and brilliance team up to save the day. Outside, the stars were calm once more. The alien faction's threat neutralized, Kale and Lysera floated through the shuttle bay, debris and holographic projections swirling gently around them. Kale turned to her. You know, I think we make a great team. Chaos and calculations, it's poetic. Lysera's ears twitched, one curling forward like a question mark. Poetic, she said, mock sternness in her voice. I would call it madness. Potato, Kale replied, floating upside down to peer at her with a grin. Madness with a hint of heroism, very dramatic, I approve. They returned to the Erebus, greeted by a crew still reeling from Kale's return and the news that the alien faction had been neutralized without significant loss. Robots beeped greetings, maintenance drones hovered awkwardly, and the cafeteria intern finally retrieved the floating protein noodles that had drifted since the first chapter. Kale plucked one from orbit. Victory snack, he said, tossing it into his mouth. Lysera watched him, ears flicking in amusement and disbelief. Over the course of their journey, she had learned that Kale's presence was simultaneously infuriating and indispensable. He had survived when no one expected it, faced chaos with humor, and somehow taught her that improvisation, laughter, and trust were as crucial as precise calculations when navigating the cosmos. Kale turned to her suddenly.